Hey, 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 everybody.
Afternoon, good morning, good evening. Welcome to 365 Deep Dive. He's John Moore. I'm Andy Honeycutt, and this is going to be a Copilot crash course, tips, tricks, and more. John, what's up, man?
Oh, nothing. I was really big there for a second. Now we're 50-50. During the little intro, I was like, hey, wait, we're showing our screens already. I want to do like the side by side. And then I ended up like 3 times bigger than you. Doing good, man. It's been a really long week, like just lots and lots of meetings, especially like early morning ones. We're kind of exiting our phase 2 of our Copilot rollout. And now we're going to like more regular end users without like structured testing. So like we're kind of like, going to production at this point. So there's just a lot going on because it's like lots of new countries are coming on board, right? So it's a lot of like these like orientations and here's the program, here's how things work. You need to get your users to us so we can get them onboarded and all of that. But it's nice though, man. It's in Kansas City, it's 60 degrees right now, Fahrenheit. So it's been beautiful, spring feeling weather. So I'm in a way better mood because of that. Just feels like winter's hopefully slipping away. How about you, man? How's your week been?
60s, overcast, slightly cloudy, so a little bit
Nice.
of a lull in the weather outside, but otherwise doing well. It's been a big week of learning, a lot of Copilot learning, a lot of other other Microsoft process learning, but it's been a big week of learning, and happy to bookend it with something that I
Hmm.
think is going to be really fun, and that's going to be this deep dive. Um, we want to kind of jump right into it. We've got some cool stuff to um we got some cool stuff to cover, and I thought it'd be kind of cool if we started with something that was like hot off the press. So with that, why don't we go ahead, dive in, but while we're kind of sharing our screens and getting this pulled up, we wanted to talk today about real world tips and tricks for Copilot that
Hmm.
that we've learned since we've been in the early the EAP, the early access program, and just working with this now for 6, 8, 10 months.
Yeah,
There's
it's
been a
been a while
lot
now.
of kind of ins and outs and the questions from people that we're trying to like onboard, and so we were
Hmm.
brainstorming and we were like, man, we've got this whole list of like practical tips and tricks. Why don't we just do a whole episode on that? So we're gonna do that, but as always, please use the chat, whatever you're joining, LinkedIn, uh, X, Twitter, or YouTube. Use the chat and add to the conversation. What are your tips and tricks? What are the things that you've learned along the way? And if we're doing something and there's something you want to add to that conversation, let us know. We're happy to try that in real time
Yeah,
as we're going through it.
for sure. So the first thing to dive in and our top tip or trick is how to properly spell Copilot. So, Andy, you created this with Dali, right? And you've been
With
like
Copilot.
it's been a never-ending journey for us to be like, okay, like how I know that you're kind of new to Copilot is that like they spell it like co-pilot. So, um,
Capital P on the pilot.
yeah,
There's a whole bunch of different variations. So let's just get it out of the way now. It's Copilot. It's all one word. Only the C is capital. Everything else is lowercase, including the P.
no
It's Copilot.
hyphens. Yeah, it's co-pilot, not co-pilot. Jeez, guys. Okay. So, um, Andy, we wanted to start out first with something that's like hot off the presses,
Yep.
which is the notebook feature in Copilot, formerly known as Bing Chat and Bing Chat Enterprise,
Yep.
right? So that's another thing we'll get into a little bit later, which is like, okay, tell me about Copilot versus Copilot versus Copilot. We'll have a table that shows that. But I think Andy, you wanted to kind of show off the notebook first,
Yeah.
right?
So this is a feature that Microsoft started blogging about a few months back. They made a couple of announcements and social media around it, and it's a really cool little feature, but it's kind of a subtle little feature. I'm going to start off in Copilot for public, and then we'll kind
Hmm.
of work our way back to this version, which is Copilot for the enterprise. So I'm over here. This is Andy out in the wild, and just going into my web browser, opening up Bing, um, and then I'm here working with Copilot. But along the top, we've got this Copilot notebook feature. And I'm going to go into the notebook in a second, but if you look down at the prompt editor down below, the important thing to point out is the number of characters that you can work with down there. So in the prompt editor, 2,000 characters is part of that, and then the conversation is limited to a number of back and forth based off of free versus paid versus enterprise as to how many
Hmm.
times you can go back and forth as part of that conversation. But with this, let's go into the notebook feature, and I see this on the top. And this is the Copilot notebook. So, what can you do with the Copilot notebook? Well, first, I want to point out, notice the number of characters down here at the bottom. It went from 2,000 to 18,000 characters. I can basically write the better part of a novel inside of here if I want. And then I can go ahead and start prompting inside of here. But this is what's really cool about it. When you're working with this, you can test your prompts. So you're able to go in and you can just insert a prompt inside of there, and you can test it and you can see the results of that right there in the editor, which is really cool because now you can iterate on a single prompt, and you can really try to optimize that prompt before you go and maybe enter it in Copilot for a Word document, or Copilot for Microsoft 365. You can
Hmm.
really explore the ins and outs of that prompt and see the results here. Now, I've done some testing on it. I'm working on a video. Hopefully, I'll get that out next week on this. I'm saying that out loud, so I'll hold myself to that deadline. But I've went back and forth on this in the free version, which is Andy out in the world, and the enterprise version, and the results are actually really, really consistent inside of here, which is really cool. All right, so we have one prompt in already, and you can see like this is the output and this is the result. So let's go back and let's modify that prompt that I just gave it, and let's go from a good prompt and let's go and do something. We'll consider this a better prompt. All right, so we'll paste that in. Actually, I did a copy, so hold on one second. Should be using my keyboard shortcuts. There we go. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and submit that. This could be considered a better prompt, and it'll respond. And you'll see it's going to have more detail. And this is how we just iterate on it. So for those new users that are just getting started with it, this is the way that you can really explore what you input and what the output of that's going to be. Add a keyword, change a phrase, change the ask, change the goal inside of there, and you can see in real time dramatically different results. Now it's telling me that this is 2 of 30 down in the corner. It doesn't have the flowing conversation like you normally see whenever you're prompting, where there's a back and forth, kind of left and right, going through there. And in the blog
Hmm.
post, Microsoft mentions being able to revert back to the previous prompt that you entered. I haven't been able to find that in the UI, so there may be just an update that's coming or something obvious that I'm
Hmm.
not seeing. But
Yeah, I
now
was
we've got
gonna
our
ask about that, if there's like a way to, go back to the previous response and kind of compare them.
Yeah, I haven't seen that, but there's a way around that, which is actually really cool. And that's actually down here in the lower part of the editor. There's an
Okay.
export button. If you look at the lower part of the screen, you can export the results of the prompt that you just optimized down here in a Word document, in a PDF, or in a text file. This is really cool. So I'm going to export this into a Word document. So it's going to generate a Word document, and it's going to drop that in my OneDrive. There's a folder in my OneDrive that it created called Documents. Now I have that document right here, and I can see it's about 339 words. And it went ahead and put some formatting in there. Now I've got the base of something to kind of start with, and all I did was use the notebook to kind of start that process. Now I've done a
Hmm.
few of these, so you see, like this one, 288 words. That was the good prompt. This one about 326 words. That's the better prompt. And this one 479 words. This was the best version. So I was doing a good, better, best scenario and testing
Hmm.
that. And now I've got the results of all three, and I can compare those with one another. So I
And you
thought
can really see
that
the
was really
change in the
cool.
structure, you know,
Hmm.
the structural differences, and it I think this is a really good way to, like, practice your prompt engineering skills, like,
Yes.
see how whenever you go to what Microsoft, talks about the 4 ingredients, right? You've got just a single, "Hey, I need a blog post about this," to, "Okay, I need to include my source that I want it to look at. I need to give it an expectation. I need to set, like, constraints on it," those kind of ingredients of a prompt, and you can see, like, how it gets better over time. Um, there was a couple questions that was, like, James posted, "Where do we enable this within Edge?" So, James, this is actually on the bing.com/chat website that Andy's going to. So, this isn't available in the Edge sidebar yet. Is that right, Andy?
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's, like, in bing.com/chat,
Yeah.
and
So like,
then
just go here. I'll pull it up on the screen. So bing.com/chat, just enter that in.
yeah.
And then you're here inside of Copilot. And then depending on whether you're a public account or you're an enterprise account, you're going to look up here in the upper portion. You're going to look for Notebook, the upper left-hand side of the screen.
Yeah, and if you have a Copilot license, like a M365 Copilot license, you'll see work and web. This is under the web tab. There's the Copilot, or
Yeah.
the notebook thing. And then Samuel has a good point too, that it doesn't look like it's providing sources in the notebook. So that's another difference, is it doesn't seem to be citing where it got its info from.
Yeah, that's a really good point. But keep in mind, we're using the notebook to optimize a prompt. So like we can kind of see like what the results are going to be. We would take this to another Copilot experience and maybe use it there to really start drafting that material. So
Hmm.
pointing, thanks Samuel for joining it. Glad to have you here and for pointing that out. So it's not giving those references, but this is the thing, kind of extending off of that. I'm still Andy out in the public. If I switch over to Andy with an enterprise account, I see the notebook there in the upper left hand corner as well. So there's the notebook there, and I can
Mhm.
go in and I can do the same thing. I can test out my prompts here, even in an enterprise environment where my data is actually going to be protected. I still have the 18,000 characters to work with. It's still going to generate that thing that I'm looking for. I will be able to export that. But because I'm connected to an enterprise account, it's going to put it in my enterprise OneDrive account. Just make sure you got the web tab toggled up at the top along with that. As it's doing this, though, one of the things that I noticed in my testing was how consistent it was, even across two different environments. So, like for example, mastering prompts, a beginner's guide to Copilot, and like if we go back and like we look how similar um, that sorry that look how similar that is. Mastering prompts, a beginner's guide. What is a prompt? Why are prompts important? And as I go through, and I feel like that's a bug in Edge. Every time I try to scroll down, it wants to take me back to the Bing experience. But as I scroll down through here, why are prompts important? Why are prompts important? Or crafting effective prompts, tips and best practices. Um, it's very consistent in what I prompted it to do and the output.
Mhm.
And it's even doing this across two separate experiences. I thought that was just really, really interesting because I feel like now we're starting to get to the point where you can reuse a prompt and have consistent expectations to it. So in this particular example, I could take this, write a blog post for a beginner audience who wants to learn how to use Copilot and insert a different topic into that. And then I've got a pretty consistent like look and feel to the thing that I'm crafting. So I like the
Mhm.
consistency piece of that. But here we're seeing it. I'm in an enterprise environment. I'm able to work with it from there, and I was able to bring out similar type content
Mhm.
through a um, through exporting to Word. So I think the notebook feature is really, really cool. Wanted to lead with that because that's kind of something that's starting to gain a little bit of buzz. And
Mhm.
um, for practicing prompts, that's going to be huge. Now, I
Yeah.
should also point out, we've got a couple of resources that can definitely help. So, for example, Microsoft's got a great article on creating effective prompts where they break down the elements of an effective prompt: goal, context, expectations, and source. And you really want to prompt with these four things in mind. The goal is, what are you specifically trying to get Copilot to create? I want to create a blog post based off of this topic. The context: why do you need this information? Well, it's a blog post and I want to teach people, or I want to inform people about how to do this thing. What are the expectations? What's the audience that you're going to want to release that to? It's a beginner audience that are just kind of getting started with it. And then you
Mhm.
can also reference sources, fact check and reference specific sources like support.microsoft.com to validate your responses. And when you start prompting with those four kinds of things in mind, you can really get some amazing results out of it and some consistent results. And now you can use the notebook with kind of those four things in mind, and you can really experiment and see how subtle changes inside of the prompt can have a big effect on that. So make sure we post this link out there for anybody that's interested in it. There's a couple of different versions of this that Microsoft has out there that we'll share. But
Mhm.
that's the notebook feature. I've been playing with it for
Yeah.
a few days now. I've had some fun with it, and can try to get a video out soon.
So I had a little bit different experience. So I we talked about like the sources and the references. I did something that like definitely requires it to go look at the web for that information. When it did that, it actually did cite its sources this time. So I'm wondering if just maybe your prompt that you've been working with is only needing to use pre-trained data, so it didn't need to cite any sources. I'm curious, like if you were asking about some type of like new technology or something like from the news, that if it was forced to go out and try to get external information, if it would have pulled from that. So, um, but yeah, this is my new prompt. If I want to for sure see if something is connected to the web, I'll ask something about Taylor Swift. That way I know it's going to go to the internet for that. So that's my new like how relevant is this? Is it from 2021 or 2023? It used to be like who's the US president cuz sometimes it'd be like I don't know. It's 2 years later. So, okay. So you want to dive into the individual applications like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, those
Well,
apps, and just do
briefly,
yeah.
before we even get into that,
Okay.
let's go ahead and address the question about the different Copilot experiences: Copilot for the public versus Copilot
Yeah.
Enterprise, formerly known as Bing Chat Enterprise, and then Copilot for Microsoft 365. We
Hmm.
got some just high level information that we want to briefly introduce about that, and then we're going to kind of go through and do a whole bunch of tips and tricks.
Yeah. So there's Copilot versus Copilot versus Copilot. Like everything's getting named Copilot, right? And there's three flavors of what's called Copilot, and that's excluding like Copilot for Sales and Copilot Studio and all that. When we're talking like the chat bot experience that's similar to like Chat GPT, there's Copilot for consumers, there's Copilot which used to be called Bing Chat Enterprise. Now that's called Copilot with commercial data protection. That's that little green flag that says your data is protected. Then there's Copilot for Microsoft 365. And this has been making the rounds on like LinkedIn recently of like this table. But we've got our own table that's a little bit of a deeper dive comparison. So what I've got here is I've been kind of maintaining this like Bing Chat versus Bing Chat Enterprise versus Chat GPT versus Copilot. And I updated this week with what I know about and what I can confirm with different things. So hopefully this gives you a better idea of specifically what you can and can't do across the different things that are called Copilot. Like for instance, Copilot Consumer that allows you to do Dolly image generation using Dolly 3. You can also do that in the thing formerly known as Bing Chat Enterprise. That's Copilot with commercial data. But if you have Copilot for M365, the one that's at office.com, the work tab, if you're on copilot.microsoft.com or in Microsoft Teams, that one does not have image generation, right? So that's one of the key differences is like with Copilot, you're able to do image generation. With M365 Copilot today, you're not able to do that. The ability to save chat, that's another thing that's different, is that in Copilot Consumer, you might have seen that whenever Andy was doing his demo in his personal account, you can save those chats, that chat history. You can go back. If you're using the artist formerly known as Bing Chat Enterprise, Copilot with commercial, that one is doesn't have the ability to save those chats. But if you step up to $30 a month and you're doing Copilot M365, you do save chats now, but the chat retention applies according to your team's chat retention. So those are some of the differences. There was a question I see that came in that says, where does Copilot Pro fit into this? I think they're calling it Copilot Premium, aren't they, Andy? And that's $20 a month extra. So I haven't done a comparison deep into those two, but I know that like you get more of everything, right? Like you get a higher token count, you get you get more images where it uses points or something, right?
So
Like
they're definitely
Microsoft
calling it
points.
Copilot Pro. I got it on the screen over there.
Okay,
Copilot
I gotta
Pro.
change that to Pro then.
Yeah, it's Copilot Pro, $20 a month.
Okay.
Per user, and then you do get some extra capabilities with that. I think the number of characters that you can work with per prompt is higher. I think your conversation history can is a little bit longer versus like the free version of it. There's a couple other features there. Admittedly, I don't have the Copilot Pro license. I have the Copilot Free and I have the Copilot
Mhm.
Enterprise license. For that middle tier, the $20 a month, I'm a long term uh, Chat GPT subscriber. So I'm just kind of like riding that in that $20
Yeah.
tier just so I can get a healthy comparison between Chat GPT and Copilot Enterprise capabilities.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I'm using Chat GPT Plus, doing that $20 a month, and it's
Mhm.
like, gosh, I want to be on the bleeding edge of this stuff, and I want to be able to have all of it, to like be able to test. But it's like $20 here, $20 there, $10 for Mid Journey. Like it's adding up, man.
It really
Do
is.
you get Notion AI, like all those things? It's like I don't know that I want to do $200 a month for all the different subscriptions. But yeah, Griffin said he thinks that I've heard that too. I think Pro connects to your like M365 personal and family subscriptions as well, I believe. And yes, Marilyn, that's in Copilot Consumer that you're able to go up to Pro for $20
Right.
a month. Yeah. So the kind of the biggest takeaway for me from this chart is that like one, if you're going to do image generation, you got to use like the non M365 Copilot. If you want your work data, like your emails, your chats, and your files, you're using M365 Copilot.
Right.
And it's really between that work and web tab. I'm hoping to see this consolidate over the next like year, hopefully. And like some of these things kind of blend together so that we don't have to like switch context so much. But that's wishful thinking, maybe. Hopefully, we'll see what happens. Um,
All right.
okay, so yeah, that covers that. You want to talk about Word first?
Yeah, let's dive
Okay.
in to our individual Copilot experiences. So, and by individual, I mean Copilot in the various apps and services.
Mhm.
So, in this section, we're going to be talking about Copilot in Microsoft Word. There's a couple of different ways that you can work with it in Word, and we don't want to cover, some of the things that like we've done in like some of our previous deep dives. What we want to talk about here are some of the like tips and tricks to like really get you going with that. So just uh, basic, you can draft right in the body with Copilot, and that's like prompting against it. This is where you can say, hey, create a memo from a list of bullet points around this topic or this idea. This is where you can ideate. This is where you can kind of do a brain dump and then have Copilot like take that, run with it, and fill in some of the gaps. You've also got the Copilot in the command bar experience. This is more where you might be able to do things where, like, you can write about something, but if you have content in there, you can say, summarize this content, ask questions against this content. And there are limits to like the amount of content, the number of pages, the size of the document that you're going to be able to interact with it with. Now, as you're getting started with this, we point this out in all of our onboarding classes, but it's kind of like level 101. But not everybody's aware of it. You've got access to Copilot Labs, a prompt library down at the bottom, and just want to bring that up real quick. So hit the book icon. That brings up a couple of prompts. So like you can ask, and it gives you a few different things to kind of think about, um, a few different prompts. But if you click on View More Prompts, this accesses Copilot Labs. So Copilot Labs has some predefined, kind of tested, verified prompts from Microsoft that are really good starting points. And because I'm starting this from Word, it's already putting the focus on these prompts to Word. It's kind of scaling down inside of there. But there are prompts in Copilot Labs for all of the Copilot experiences: Word, Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, Outlook, Teams, and more. And what's really cool is if you find one that you like, you can hit that little bookmark and you can save it, and then it's going to show up underneath your saved prompts right over here. But Copilot Labs is the website that you can actually go and visit. And so when you open that up, it'll open it in a new tab in your web browser. And then you can see a plethora of different prompts across different experiences. So that's something, if you're not sure what to ask it, use this to kind of get an idea and to kind of brainstorm around the capabilities. That being said, you can also take one of these prompts. You could like click on it, and then you can start kind of making it your own. So when you bring this up, like you see here, I just clicked on this. What's the latest? I can like insert something in there, and then I can use this, share it with others, save it, or I can copy this and then bring it back into Word and work with it. But they give you some ideas, some things that you can kind of do with that. You could also just copy that text, and using the new notebook feature that we just talked about a moment ago, you could actually head into your Copilot notebook and maybe use that as the basis for creating a new prompt. So what's the latest from, I don't know, I'll say from John. And then maybe start iterating off of that. Now, this should be, you see, this is like I'm in the enterprise, but it might not necessarily have access to things like my emails and so forth. But just kind of an idea, something to think about, maybe using Copilot Labs for that. So then heading back into the,
Um,
the
before
document.
we leave Copilot Lab, Amelia has a question about, can you save your own prompts in Copilot Lab, or is it just these pre-canned kind of like Microsoft provided ones?
Currently, to my knowledge, it's the pre-canned Microsoft ones.
Yeah.
So it's
That's
not
what
like
I've seen
a
too, is
prompt
you're
gen
essentially
community.
bookmarking them. You can't really like create prompts and then save them for later. I'm hoping that they add that at some point. I'm also really hoping, because there's some like authentication layer here, like you have to be a Copilot licensed member in order to get to Copilot Lab. I'm hoping that that means that down the road we'll have maybe like an organizational prompt library. So maybe like admins would be able to, show prompts and add prompts and things like that. But right now, it's kind of like what you get out of the box from Microsoft is what you have. So, great question.
All right, so let's actually head back in and let's do some stuff with Word. Um, what what I want to start off with is something like kind of basic, and this is like just a tip that I kind of start off with.
Hmm.
Just using short bullet points. to kind of like get something on the paper, and then you can go back and you can iterate over that, maybe change the prompt a little bit to try to get something a little bit more detailed. So like I might
Yeah.
go in and say something like, create a memo from a list of bullet points or from a list of core ideas. So like I would insert like where those bullet points are. I would reference those, or I might just create like 2 or 3 bullet points to start off with. If I'm going to do like
Mhm.
from a list of core ideas, I need to define what the core ideas are, or actually where they're from. So let's take this, break it in half. Um, Create a memo from a list of, and I'm just going to replace bullet points. Create a memo from, and I might do something along the lines of spring um, coffee shop specials. And then I would like generate that. Now I'm asking it to do a whole lot here. I'm asking it to create a memo. I'm also asking it to generate some spring coffee shop specials. I haven't defined what those are, but I'm depending on Copilot to leverage its LLM and its capabilities to like go and do something like that. And then I'm going to
Mhm.
iterate over that. But what I like about this, what kind of getting started is I can just insert like a couple of like brief bullet points, and then I can go back and through iteration, I can really nail it, fine tune it to get into something more specific. So that's kind of the first one that I want to mention, the bullet points, using bullet points to kind of get the conversation started and then iterate over it. I think that's a really helpful tip.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. Like I a lot of times I feel like I'm stuck in that Copilot sidebar, you know? And like I don't really branch out of that. But if you spend more time in what did you call it? Like the compose box or something, like over on the left-hand side. If you spend more time there, I think you can get a lot of value out of that like I don't know what you call the like the actual play field of Microsoft Word, you know, like I don't know what it is about like that barrier between the right sidebar and the actual page. But
Right.
like, yeah, if I only keep myself there, it's a little bit of a closed-minded way of using Copilot. And when you like use it inside the document, you can iterate a little bit easier, like you just showed. So that's definitely a takeaway for me that I need to get better about.
I always think of whenever I'm working with this, I always think like it's not just the one Copilot that I'm going to be working with. I'm going to be doing like maybe something here. Like I'm going to be working here and like kind
Mhm.
of like forming my ideas and my content. But a lot of times I'm going to open up like this sidebar over here. Maybe I have a conversation or a search going on to
Mm.
like pull back some information, and then I'm going to apply that. But oftentimes when I do that, I'm bringing the bullet points over here, and then I'm letting Copilot kind of fill in some of the details. And that gives me kind of a first draft. And then I'm going to go back and I'm going to rewrite, I'm going to tweak,
Mhm.
and I'm going to like move that into something that's more in line with what I want. But this kind of gets me started. It
Yeah.
gives me, okay, here's a couple of bullet points. Now I've got something on the paper, and then let's keep moving.
That's another good tip too, is like you're doing like Copilot Inception. You're like Copilot within Copilot because you're in the web version of Word, and like that's a pretty cool idea. Like it's almost like you've got two assistants working for you. You've got your Copilot chief of staff, right? You're one that's like actually helping you like build the document and all that. But then in the sidebar and edge, you've got your Copilot research assistant where you're looking up things and you're trying to ask, within the context of the page you have open. That's an interesting idea. It's almost like you went from hiring an assistant to hiring an assistant and an intern, you know? Like, that's an interesting idea.
And I do this. I use this particular method all the time. It's really really helpful. So I'm
Nice.
actually using 2 different Copilot experiences to do something like this. So like I had it like kind of do just a quick a basic search, spring
Mhm.
coffee specials. I wasn't really specific in what I'm looking for, but right away I can see, ooh, a salted caramel frappuccino. That actually sounds like a good spring special for Jolly
Nice.
Roger Java. We might have to put that on the menu. Caramel macchiato. That one's kind of tried or true year round. A lavender latte. I like the alliteration there. That might be something kind of fun and playful for the spring. So right away, just got 2 ideas, and then I can go and maybe do some bullet points inside of here and say like let's use Copilot. Add a lavender latte and salted caramel. And then just have it kind of like start filling in some of the placeholder, and you're really going back and forth between two different Copilot experiences to really fine tune the thing in the middle.
Yeah, dude, that's kind of crazy. I feel like I'm having like epiphanies in this in this deep dive that I hadn't thought about doing that type of stuff. That's awesome. Um, I don't really know that I have a whole lot extra word tips. Like I spend all of my day mostly in PowerPoint, you know, and I think if you're ready to jump to PowerPoint, I can show my tip being like creating from a slide template.
Yeah.
What do you think? You want to move on from Word?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay,
We
cool.
can move into the next one.
All right, let me bring mine up. So, all right, I've got office.com open here. You can also do this from the PowerPoint application. And when I'm doing demos of like creating slides in PowerPoint, especially creating them from Word documents, I get a lot of questions about, can I use the corporate template, right? Like we've got this template published, it's got the right colors, the right font, the right, footer and all that type of stuff. How do I do that? Well, Copilot now has the ability to use a template. And the prerequisite for this is your organization needs to be using something called the SharePoint Organizational Asset Library. If they have that OAL org asset library turned on and they've loaded in some PowerPoint templates, then you would actually see them under like more themes. You would see your organization's name right there, and then you'd be able to open that up and see the templates that are published. We're working in a sandbox, so unfortunately, we don't have that yet. We've asked if hopefully they'll publish some for us. So I'm just going to use one of these like pre-canned templates because it works the same way. But essentially, you would open up your company's template or the one that you want to use, and you would go from here. So if you've opened the template, it will use that design in your iterations. So like we're using Arial, we've kind of got this like design, methodology. It's using this like Saban next, stuff like that. So the look and feel is this consistent theme. Now, you can invoke Copilot and you could override these files. I've found that sometimes that errors out, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So my tip is you want to highlight all these slides and delete them. Like just clean it out, but you've got it open with that design kind of loaded in this session. Then we're going to open up Copilot and we're going to ask it to create a presentation from a file. And then I can just pick one of these like random Contoso files, like marketing your audience, and we can submit that. And it's going to retain that design language into this drafted slide deck. So this is really helpful for me whenever I don't want to have to go through and change like a bunch of fonts and colors and things like that, especially because you might have like a whole color block in your corporate template. So it's looking at that Word document, it's getting the structure and the outline and all of that, and it's going to create some slides based off of that Word document structure that we had. Now, some things I'm hoping that we see in the future would be one, I'd like to be able to create from more than one file. I've gotten a lot of questions about that. And two, I've gotten questions about like, I've got these other slides that I've, kind of got like examples of like 4 different slide templates. Could I like create from another deck? Right now, Copilot will tell you that it can only use Word documents. Hopefully in the future, we'd be able to do it for more file types. But you can see here, it's created 14 slides. It's also included speaker notes, which is one of my favorite things. And it's added those images and it's used that same block design, right? You've got these color blocks. It's using that Saban next. So it's retained the font, the colors, the scheme that I need. Um, and that works well. The other question I get a lot of times is like, okay, what about these pictures? Like, where are these pictures coming from? We've got this like brand marketing SharePoint site that has all of our like corporate library of images we're allowed to use. Unfortunately, today, Copilot is pulling these from Microsoft Designer or like the slide designer. It's using stock imagery from the Microsoft stock library that you get with your Microsoft license, or it's also starting to create images here and there. I've seen it create a few images with Dali. I don't know that it's Dali 3 because they're kind of low quality in the ones I've seen, but I think it's getting better. All of that to say, though, if you need like approved brand images from your company, you're going to want to download those separately. And then you can just right click and you can hit change picture from a file and you can pull that one in. So that's another little pro tip is like, if you need those, you'll have to get them. If you don't need them and the Microsoft image library is okay, you're good to go. So that's kind of my favorite PowerPoint things. You can also like organize slides, things like that. Is there anything in particular that you found helpful, Andy?
The organized slides. By far, that is my number
Yeah.
one tip um, for PowerPoint is the organize because it breaks it up into sections for you. It adds in
Hmm.
a section header slide. It organizes the slides within those sections, and that's a huge time saver because I do a lot of that stuff manually, and it's just
Yeah.
kind of tedious. You have to right click, add a section, rename it, right click, add a section, rename it, and then kind of drag and drop around. And if you haven't added section slide or header slides in there, it's doing a lot of that work for you. And then if you don't like some of that, it's easy enough to just delete. But that one by far is my favorite.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to do the organized deck right now. So there we go. It just finished. Just like what Andy was talking about, it takes that agenda and it breaks it up into sections and names those sections. I think that's really, really nice. There's Jeremy has a good comment of like kind of the real power. I think we're stepping through this here is like the idea of like doing your research and building an idea, getting that into like Word, right? To kind of organize the idea and structure the idea, then taking that over to PowerPoint and creating like a presentation for that idea. It's that chaining or that kind of like going from app to app and you're kind of going through the suite using Copilot as you go. That's like one of the most powerful things of, Copilot all up. um, P from EY. Thanks for watching. She has a question about infographics. So yeah, she's in our corporate internal communications group. Does a lot of like technology communications, and a lot of times it's like, all right, it's best to try to like get this complex thing across as a visual or picture. Unfortunately, in PowerPoint today, you're not able to say, "Hey, make me a diagram about, that shows this or that." Um, you could, I think maybe my recommendation, and I'd be curious what you think, Andy, is I probably would go into uh, Copilot for web. So like using like copilot.microsoft.com into the web to say like, help me with some ideas for a visual aid to explain the Microsoft graph, right? And have it like, okay, I think it'd be good to do it like a spider web or do it like this other thing or like do a flow chart. And then it's not super duper accurate, but it's good for like inspiration to be like, okay, create a, an infographic or create some type of thing to explain this concept. It is going to get the text kind of okay, kind of not okay for the most part. Um, but this is where like Chat GPT is a little bit better with like the plus subscription because you could actually plug into like charts.io and stuff like that and create real diagrams. Um, have you done any like iterating on that or testing with creating visuals?
I've seen, and this is recent. I've seen that Dali is starting to do better at creating infographics. So, like, you would go through here, have the conversation, and then tell it to create the infographic. And I've seen it's gotten a lot better at that recently. Um, it gets you a starting point for the infographic. It gets you a pretty good layout with it. I haven't done extensive testing around it. I've tried it a little bit in the past here with Dolly
Hmm.
3, and I've tried it with Midjourney, which is a completely separate product, and they're both each generation getting a little bit better.
Hmm. Yeah, we were kind of iterating on this with our Teams Nation presentation we recently did. It was very themed around airlines. You know, we were kind of like going really meta with it, and we were wanting to explain things like an airline meal menu or an airline safety briefing card. Right. So Andy was trying to create like a safety briefing card with this content, and it kind of jumbled up the text, you know, but it gave us like a layout that then we went into PowerPoint and made manually. So like this one here, I'm doing just like give me a graphic that explains the Microsoft graph. And it's like, okay, so that's not a graphic that shows how it works, but this might be a good graphic to talk about, you know, a visual representation. And then you could talk through, well, the graph is all about the interconnected people and things they're working on and all of the assets within Microsoft and how you can traverse this network tree, right, to find information about what you're looking for. So you could kind of use it to explain a topic, but it doesn't really, it's not going to create like an architectural diagram right now.
I really want that image. Make sure you save that.
That
I want
that
to.
picture.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, I'll save that for you.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a pretty good one actually. Okay, so what do we got here? We've got a question about in Intune. Do you know how we can add the Copilot extension to the browser? In my lab, the Edge option ID is locked and I can't find a way to add it to the Intune profile. That's a good question. I don't know off the top of my head. I mean, I know that you can manage the Edge browser. Like in my organization, we manage like bookmarks and things like that, and we've actually disabled the we've disabled the Bing or the Edge sidebar for our organization just because like we're going through like an assessment phase right now. But I don't know about how you can like actually make sure that people can get to it.
Yeah,
um
that's set through a global policy. I don't deal with those kinds of policies in my day job. There's other teams that actually handle that. Um, in the demo tenant that I'm in,
mhm,
Microsoft has not turned those features off, so they're turned on for us by default. We've got the
mhm.
question in the chat though. Might be something for us to explore and put a post on like after the fact. But day to day, I don't deal with policies related to Edge or with policies related to our Windows operating systems. There's only so much I can fit up here, and I'm focusing on the prompting stuff.
Yeah. There's another good question about like Windows 11. So like I'm a Mac guy. I know you're a Mac guy, but you've also got PCs. Have you played with the Windows 11 Copilot yet?
Not in the taskbar. Well,
Hmm.
let me say, I've clicked on it and it opened up kind of a lightweight version of the Copilot sidebar panel.
Yeah.
Um, but I haven't done much beyond that. I know there were a couple of updates that were coming out recently around that. Windows Weekly talked about it on their weekly podcast a few days ago.
Hmm.
So there's some more functionality. I think they went from there's like 16 things that you can ask it to do now, which it's kind of weird. You have to know what to ask it to do from the Copilot experience versus like being able to free prompt against like the system. But I
Mm.
haven't explored it thoroughly in
It's a
Windows
little bit
11
more
yet.
like Siri or the like Amazon Assistant, something like that. You got to be a little bit more prescriptive.
You know, I tend to do most of my co-piloting through the web browser or through the Office apps and services, not
Mm.
so much the operating system.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to Excel. I see you've got a spreadsheet ready to go here.
So I'm gonna start off with my number one tip, and this one drives me crazy. I am over here. I'm on row 3, and I'm in column P. That is where I'm active. I'm gonna hit Copilot in the ribbon up at the top. Copilot preview is gonna open, and everything's grayed out.
Hmm.
It's because I haven't interacted with the table.
Yeah.
And this one is really basic, but I deal with this question so many times a week, every week. Why is Copilot grayed out for me? Well, you need a table to work with, and you need to be in the table, and then Copilot lights up, and then you can start working with it. So if it's grayed out, that's the first thing to start with. Are you in a table? Where's your cursor? Then from there, we can start interacting with it, and you can take advantage of some of the capabilities there. But I want to go off the beaten path a little bit. This is my company data. Maybe I'm not using an enterprise license version of Copilot. Maybe I'm, experimenting using Copilot Pro as in the general public. So how can I leverage Copilot without exposing sensitive company data? And one of the things I like to do is just grab like the header of the table at the top and the first row of data. Take that and then go into another Copilot experience and experiment there, and then bring the results of that experiment back over into my company data. So like I'll go in and I'll head, let me go in my web browser, for instance, and we'll just head to um, Bing
Mhm.
or Copilot for enterprise. And I'll say something like, I don't know, create 10 more rows of sample data for, and then I'm just going to paste that in. And it does a really good job of interpreting, oh, this is a table, these are the columns, and then these are the values. And then it typically just gives you a table with some additional sample data to work with. From there, you can open up a new sheet in the current workbook. You can open up a completely new workbook, and you can use that as your exploratory workbook. And then you can take the results of that back to your production workbook. You can keep your company data safe. And here you see it's just generating fictitious data. It's just throwing some numbers together. And you can ask it to specifically format it in a table. You can copy and paste back and forth, but that's really helpful when I'm just experimenting. And admittedly, Excel is probably the one app that I need to spend more time really learning. I'm not an
Mhm.
Excel power user by any means, but this is a great starting point for me to like really start doing some cool stuff with Excel.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Like I don't use Excel a whole lot. I'm certainly not creating things in Excel a lot. It's usually like somebody else sends me a spreadsheet and I'm like filling it in, right? But yeah, the big one for my organization has also been, hey, make sure you go to insert and hit table from the ribbon. That catches people so frequently. I really hope Microsoft can figure out some kind of enhancement there to not have to do that because the feedback I've gotten is like, bro, nobody uses a table. Like they just open up a spreadsheet and keep going. Um, so I hope that that gets better. From my understanding, I think it's because like Copilot kind of needs that constraint around a table. Like it needs to be able to navigate the table to understand it. So I understand probably logically why. I just hope that they can maybe get a little bit easier about that. Um, but yeah, like you're showing here, you just paste that in and then you just got to do insert table and it'll fix it for you, it'll put those headers and everything in.
Yep.
So, yeah, Cody has a good point here too. Like it needs to be in your OneDrive also. Like you need to, be using it in your M365 environment because otherwise like it's not going to know that you're licensed for this functionality. So, it needs to like be logged in and aware that you're like working with something in the tenant for where you're licensed for Copilot. That's a good point.
Yeah. And then I'll go ahead and throw another tip in. This one's really helpful for me. The Admittedly, I'm not a power user, so I don't know all the ins and outs of the syntax that's needed to create a formula in Excel. And you can use the add formula off to the sidebar over here.
Mhm.
Again, this is one of those situations where I find myself going back and forth between different Copilot experiences. So, like, I've already given Copilot that sample data right over here. So it
Mhm.
has an idea of like the headers and the columns and so forth. And just like looking at this data, I know the things like, and I'll go back to the sheet. I know like the quantity in stock. I know the inventory value. I know the reorder, levels and whatnot. So when it hits
Hmm.
this level, I know it's going to take this amount of time, and this is the number of items that I want to reorder. And I like ideally, it's simple enough for me to like insert a column and calculate out the unit price by the reorder time in days. I could tell it to add a formula to do that. But I can also go back to like where I started to generate this, and I can ask Copilot over here, whether I'm in web or whether I'm in work, to help me create a formula to um, calculate out the reorder value
Hmm.
or reorder amount based off of the quantity and time. So like and like I'm not going to be too super specific with it because I just want to kind of get it started, and then I might go back and insert a column based off of that. The other benefit of it is having this conversation over here. um, I can experiment a little bit, and then I can go back and maybe in the sidebar add formula to column. I've kind of already created my optimized prompt, and then I can just do it as basically a single insert inside of there, and have it start doing or insert that column for me, and then have the correct formula and everything kind of ready to go. So
Hmm.
that one's kind of helpful for me. Another one is part of my day job is providing office hours, help and training and support. And people come with questions around this, like they might have a formula that they're working on. I can paste the formula in, use some sample data, and then figure out why the formula is actually broken. And so I'm having that as a side conversation over here rather than actually working in the workbook. I'll take the results of this back into the workbook and work with it over there. You see here, it's given a whole explanation of reorder quantities, the average daily usage time, the average lead time, and it's explaining all that. I can go back and forth inside of that conversation and work with some of that.
Hmm. Um, yeah, you were talking about like using it for working with formulas. Unfortunately, this isn't a super impressive demo, but if you've got like a huge spreadsheet, what I've used it for is for building pivots a lot because like I'm the type of guy that I do pivot tables like so infrequently that I usually have to like go find a YouTube video for how to do it. But a lot of times it's really easy to do it with natural language where you can say like show me this data organized by this or pull out all of the sales for like say you've got like a global sales report and it's like by region and everything but you say pull out all the electronic sales and it will create a pivot for you and then you can add that to another sheet right there. So I need like more data to properly show this so that it has more columns in it, but that's something that I've used it for in Excel is like having like a pivot table made for me.
Hmm.
Um, it looks like there's a couple more chats from like Phil and Marilyn about who was asking about the Intune stuff with the Bing sidebar. So hopefully that may help somebody out there. The guy that was asking about it, I think it was Andre, I think is how you say your name. So he was asking about that. Then Marilyn put in the chat too, like that she put that link in there. You're on LinkedIn as well, so hopefully you see that link for how to manage Intune or Edge. You want to move on to Outlook, Andy?
Yeah, let's move on
Okay.
to Outlook.
This is something that we both use a lot more frequently because I get email like nobody's business. So you want to start out with that thread that you sent me about Jolly Roger Java?
Yeah.
Okay.
So um, I am uh, I'm in Outlook, and this is it seems kind of basic, but this is a huge time saver for me. So like I might go in and draft like a new message, and I got to go to my clipboard and grab your address, and so we'll say like
Oh yeah.
Jolly Roger Spring specials. All right. So I'm getting ready to send you a communication around like the spring specials. Now I've already drafted some of this like right over here. So like um I've already got some content. Um what I like doing is like just doing simple bullet points to kind of get things started. So how long are the specials going to last? How can we order? What are our specials for this month? So I'll go in. We're going to go draft with Copilot. All right. What are our spring specials? When? How much? That's it. Three
Hmm.
simple things. I'm not filling in a whole lot of details, but that gets me started. It gets me over the blank page. I use this all the time, and it's really helpful for drafting and kind of getting started. It's also helpful for just getting a reply. I could let Copilot just kind of run its course based off of the reply, but just inserting like two or three bullet points or a few bullet points inside of there
Hmm.
provides some context for what you want to draft in the body, and then that gives you the starting point, and you can totally tweak it from there. Now, it will go off the reservation and it will take some creative liberty and say, we're going to offer a 25% discount for selected items in our store. We can tweak that. I've even had it go so far as to say, come on down to Jolly Roger Java. One of the main attractions in our store is that we have a life-size pirate ship inside of the coffee shop. That's probably my favorite hallucination that I've ever seen. But with that in mind, just insert a couple of bullet points. You don't have to fill in all that. I'm reaching out to you to inform about our upcoming specials. Let Copilot handle all the word salad. You just get the main points inside of there and get that out of your head, and then you can go back
Hmm.
and massage the rest of the message. And that for me is like the biggest tip inside of there is just bullet
Hmm.
points and let it fill in the filler.
Yeah, that's really good. Um, the uh, the thing that I was going to show, but I think I'm gonna have to have you show it now, is one of the limitations of Outlook Copilot has been that you can only summarize a single thread, right? So like this email thread back and forth. I've gotten a lot of people like, I want to, be able to summarize all my recent emails and things like that. So unfortunately, I just refreshed and I lost the Copilot button. So don't do that, Andy, because it might be like rolling out still. But we found today there's what Andy's pointing to, a new Copilot button in Outlook for the web. And if you open that up, Andy, we found that it has a summarize my recent emails section so that you click that, it will summarize all of your recent emails. And, I haven't, a lot of what like Microsoft showed off was like something called clean up my inbox, where they were like telling Copilot to like scrub their inbox and kind of, tell them what's important. It doesn't do that yet, but it'll like summarize over the past couple days from what I've seen. So he's doing that right now. It'll be interesting because we're in our sandbox environment provided by Microsoft. So there's probably not going to be very much inspiring things that come out of here, but we'll see what happens. It's going to be like Dan Ray sent you an email, and then John Moore sent you an email, and that's it because nothing's happening. Um, but I'm hoping that that will be somewhere that you can use without having to go to the Copilot chat at like copilot.microsoft or in the Teams application, so that you can do like more of a mailbox type of a summary. Okay, yeah, so it didn't work probably because he doesn't have enough content in there. But yeah.
So that's a welcome change. Really excited to see that. The other way that you can do something similar to this, and this is another one of our tips actually coming up, is to actually head
Hmm.
into Copilot itself. So we'll go into
Yeah.
Copilot and chat. I'm going to switch over to the work tab. And then inside of there, you can do like what's the latest from person, organized by email, chat, and so forth. You could just go in and say, summarize, and I can't type my recent emails. And I'm going to be
Hmm.
nice. and I'm going to say please, because I want the machines to know I'll be a good battery when they take over in the future. So just using Copilot in the work tab, and you see I just don't have enough in this particular account for it to be able to pull anything back. But I use this one in my day job all the time, and it does a pretty good job of pulling back recent emails, organizing them by topic. That's another thing that you can do. So you can say, not only summarize my recent emails, prioritize by topic, or prioritize by status, and then organize by topic. So you can expand off of that, and you can do that here from Copilot for Microsoft 365, and that's a huge time saver. But now having that button to summarize over here will help. Just need more content in my sandbox to really be able to vet that.
Amelia has a good comment here about like, I hope drafting a message will support multiple languages in the future. That I've been playing a little bit with language support because like I'm in such a huge global organization. I have seen that in the Copilot chat experience, you can tell it like to switch back and forth between languages, and it supports, I think it's something like 15 languages right now. But I know like in there I did like, hey, invite my colleagues to lunch in Spanish, and it switches to Spanish. I've been playing a lot with like Japanese as well, to say like, okay, I want to talk only in Japanese, and then I talk to it in English and it replies to me in Japanese. So we'll kind of take on that persona. It might need a little scolding from time to time. I'm trying this. So I tried it in Outlook directly. I did the same, create an email in Spanish. And when it generated that, it did it in English. So um, it would be nice, yeah, if you could maybe this is good feedback for Microsoft. You know how like you can go to tone and length? It'd be interesting if you could like add languages to that or something too. For like, hey, I'm sending this to a multilingual environment. I need you to add Italian and Spanish and German, please. You know, and it just like does the email like three ways in different languages or something. That would be pretty sweet. Until then, I think we're probably relying on the intelligence in our email clients where it says like translate, and you like click translate because it detects that it's not in your home language. But yeah, you might give that a try, Amelia, if it works for you, to tell it like do this in such and such language and see if that works for you. Not really an Outlook tip, I guess, but more of a general tip. Um, so I think that's Outlook. What about Teams? There's kind of a big one to keep it moving.
So hot off the presses, brand new feature. I'm gonna have to read it. Around some changes about chat highlights in Copilot and Microsoft Teams. So Copilot and Teams can help you stay up to speed on all of your chats. You can choose the time period now up to 30 days. Uh, so when you think about chat, you're talking about those private conversations that happen off in the sidebar, like over here.
Hmm.
So whether they're one to one or within a small group, but we're also talking about conversations that happen in the context of a team. So in this particular case, we're talking about posts that are happening inside of a channel. Some of the things that you're going to be able to ask now that are actually super helpful: who joined the team, what tasks were assigned, completed, what things are overdue,
Hmm.
what decisions were made, what meetings are scheduled, what were held, what were canceled, what files were shared or collaborated on, what topics were discussed or what questions were asked along the
Hmm.
way, what feedback was given, what praise was actually received, were there any
Hmm.
problems encountered, what kind of solutions were there, and were there any announcements or events that were planned. And then one of the ones that I really, really like, and this one's been a big hit amongst our users, is
Hmm.
simply going in and through Copilot in that in the sidebar, or Copilot here inside of the Teams client. Um, what did I miss while away on PTO last week? And that one's kind of going to look at conversations. It's going to look at posts and chat. It's going to look at like email communications, and it's going to kind of bring that together into one central summary for you. There are limits as to how far it can go back, but this one really helpful coming back off of PTO, because then you can kind of prioritize a good bit. So you can see a few different planning sessions that were held, and that's basically all we've done in the sandbox, besides a couple of emails like back and forth.
It's super helpful in the real world. Yeah, where it like references people and you have these action items from this meeting and stuff like that. That is super cool. I use that anytime I'm out. I use that to help me catch up on things, especially chats. It's really helpful for chats and emails. A lot of my stuff, like I kind of do email as I go because I'm a terrible person at PTO, so I don't ever like fully check out. I kind of clean out my email as I go. But it's really good for chats that you miss. Um, yeah, I think that's been really nice. I would like to see that maybe a little bit more interactively, honestly, where like I could see that being maybe something from Viva Insights or something in the future where it's like, hey, you were out. Do you want to catch up? Because like Viva Insights will help you prepare, right, for your upcoming vacation to say, hey, do you want to turn on your out of office? Do you want to cancel your meetings for the next week? Stuff like that. It would be kind of cool if it's like, welcome back. We know that you're back online, because like maybe you scheduled your out of office. That would be something. It's a little bit less Copilot, more autopilot type of AI, where like it would be nice to nudge you rather than having to go do that prompt. But maybe that's just me splitting hairs and being like, oh, I'm nitpicking something that's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So another thing that we wanted to show in Microsoft Teams is meetings and what you're able to do in a meeting. One of my favorite things to do has been creating an FAQ. I do a lot of onboarding stuff in Microsoft Teams webinars, where like 5 times a week we're hosting a webinar to give people like a welcome to Copilot thing. And at the end, like I encourage people to ask a lot of questions, because what I like to do is at the end of that session, as the instructor, I go in and I say, give me an FAQ, and it creates a bespoke, unique FAQ for that one particular meeting. And then I share that in the chat as like a leave behind, basically. So what we've been doing in the background is Andy and we started a meeting at the beginning. So this entire time, we've actually been transcribing ourselves in Teams, and Andy is able to show what we can do in a meeting, because we've got like an hour and a half of content now that
Pretty
we can
much,
summarize. Cool. Let's check out what you can do there.
All right, so you want to do the FAQ? Do you have a
try
prompt
the
that you prefer to
FAQ
use for that?
Usually I just say, give me an FAQ as a table. I keep it real simple. And what I like to do is I like to say as a table, because if you don't say that, it's going to give you like a bullet question and a bullet answer. If you do it as a table, it's going to come back with a column for question and a column for answer, which I think is kind of easier to skim for people. So, hey, Daryl's here. Sorry for joining late. It's only 9:00 on a Saturday morning in New Zealand. Thank you, Daryl, for
Is it
joining
that late
us.
in the morning in New Zealand?
Yeah. Yeah. Holy cow, dude. I'm like lounging in bed till like 11 if I can get away with it. Yeah. Phil says, oh, that's a cool idea, the FAQ thing. So yeah, I'll be curious what it comes up with, because we've been talking about a lot of crap.
All right, so I'm going to copy that to the clipboard. I'm going to head over to OneDrive, and I'm just going to drop that into a Word document so we can see it a little bit better.
Okay. Yeah. Easier to scroll that way.
There we go.
So see, I like this table format, because it's like side by side, and I feel like it's easier to consume. It looks good in a Teams chat too. Like if I pop it into the meeting chat.
Yeah.
Which that leads me to another point. Here's a pro tip. I hope this gets better in the future again. I keep saying like, I hope this gets better. I hope that gets better. Um,
It's already pretty
but
awesome.
yeah. The thing I would like to see though is this FAQ that Andy just created. This is based off of a transcript, so it's only based off the spoken word when you're in the meeting. However, you might be in a meeting where a lot of the questions and answers are happening in the chat, right? The meeting chat. So, in my experience so far, this has only done it off of the transcript. What I have to do is what Andy's doing right here is I have to like go into the chat and invoke Copilot to ask for an FAQ for the chat. And then I get two FAQs. I just paste both of them in the chat. But I'm hoping to see that merge together soon, so that like you can only do it in one place. Because especially like I would say like MVP calls, right? The MVP calls, like you can't even hardly like pay attention to the chat because it's going so fast. There's
Yeah.
so much, like there's a whole story over in the chat. And if you only use Copilot button at the top of your meeting, you're kind of missing out on all the chat context. So that's my other pro tip is go into the chat and ask Copilot for an FAQ from that as well. Yeah, Andy, you got to go into like your top chat right there, the first one at the top of your list where the red camera
Yeah.
is, and invoke Copilot in the top corner there. Then ask for an FAQ, and it's not going to do anything, obviously, because like we're just in a meeting with no chat. But yeah, that's what I found is like I got to do it in two places right now. Um, yes, this is a good point as well from the chat. Adding premium is spectacular because another thing is if you have Teams premium, you get the intelligent recap. However, this has been added recently to the Copilot licensing. So actually, you don't need Teams Premium anymore if you have Copilot. You get the intelligent recap in your meeting as well. And what that will do, I don't think you'll be able to show it right now because it's a live meeting, but that will give you AI meeting notes, and it will give you the like topics and speakers and all that type of stuff. If you recorded and transcribed the meeting, you're able to do that.
So that
Um,
brings up a couple of other really good tips.
yeah.
So new teams. I'm in the web browser, so I don't have all the features of the desktop. Daryl says pop out the chat window. You can have the chat window side by side with whatever you're doing. That's a super helpful tip.
Mhm.
But in the new teams, you also have the Meet app. I love the Meet app. You can go ahead, you can add that into your
Mm.
sidebar, you can pin it, you can always get back to it. And it's going to show you your previous meetings, including the ability to go back and view things like recaps that are associated with them. So if the meeting was recorded, you'll see the recording there, you'll see the transcript, and then you'll see Copilot. And then you'll be able to use Copilot in that sidebar against that
Yep.
meeting. Let me see if I've got one in here where we have a transcription.
Yeah, it does have to be transcribed. That's why it didn't show anything for Andy.
Yeah, I know
But
we've
yeah,
done.
that's pretty cool because you can go back in time and see all of your stuff.
Just see. There we go. So like
There we go. So we got
this
some
one's
of
got
that
some
stuff.
good data. I can't move that too far. Well, if you look down here, it shows the speakers,
Hmm.
Andy, John, back and forth. You can also go by topics, and then you can see chapters inside of there, which is pretty cool. All
Hmm.
right. Then over here, these are the AI generated notes, but you can compare that
Hmm.
with Copilot generated notes. So you can go in and generate meeting notes over here. And you see, we've done this a couple of times already through experimentation, but I'll go ahead and create some more. And while that's loading, give a shout out to Daniel for joining in. Welcome,
Yeah.
bright and
Hey.
early in Australia. All right, so now we've got the meeting notes that were generated by Copilot, and then those are side by side with the the AI generated notes, and you can kind of get an idea of what you're getting with Copilot versus what you're getting out of Teams Premium,
Mhm.
and the notes that are generated there. You've also got the transcript, and this is kind of cool. All right, so we've got our meeting here. Meeting's running. Tells me I can go and I can capture Copilot. All right, so I'm going to stop the transcription.
Mhm.
All right, so the transcription's done. and it's if I try to go back to Copilot, I can't. Tells me that I have to start the transcription in order to work with it. Also, you leave the meeting's over, and you want to go back and you want to Copilot against the meeting. Well, if I go back into that that like recap,
Mhm.
and you've got the transcript right over here, you can download that as a doc. Once you've got it as that file, then it's just a simple. If you want to go back and Copilot against it, drop it into your OneDrive. Go and find it, and then just upload it back into your OneDrive, and then you can Copilot against that inside of there. It's the full transcript, and now you're going to be able
Mhm.
to open it up and you can ask questions, you can summarize, you can generate an FAQ. So like if the meeting's over, you can still go back and Copilot against that. And that's how you can do that by going and pulling the transcript as a file. And you see it's back and forth
Mhm.
for the conversation. And then we're able to open up, Copilot on the sidebar. And then I can do a lot of the same things. I can do that from here, or
Yeah.
I could do that from like Copilot home. So like if I were to go to Copilot for work, that file is now in my OneDrive, and then I can create an FAQ based on that file. I just need to tell it what the name of that thing is, and then I can create that FAQ around it. So
Mhm.
you don't lose the ability to Copilot against the transcript after the meeting's over, and that's one of the ways that like I'm able to go back and recover some information from it, and that's actually
Yeah,
really
and you've
helpful
also
for
got the
me.
Copilot button up there at the top of your window right now
Yeah,
as well that you can work against that transcript as well. Well, no, the top center above the recording,
right there.
like right
Yeah.
there. Yeah, yeah. So that's another place that you could do it. And it actually, if it's a traditional transcript, then it picks up like your personal conversation from even during the meeting, which is pretty awesome. You don't lose that history according to your team's chat retention. Um,
Let me tell you why doing the export is actually really valuable in my world.
okay.
I'm in a multi-tenant organization, and we have meetings that happen cross-tenant all the time. And if you're not in the same tenant where the meeting's being hosted, you can't use Copilot against that meeting. So in this case, I can pull down the transcript and I could share that or send that over to one of my colleagues that's in the other tenant, and then they would be able
Mm,
to use Copilot over there against the transcript and work with it. That's why that's one of the top of mind tricks for
okay,
me.
because you've got a foot in different areas and some places you can't use Copilot.
Yeah,
Okay.
and we've just got the boundary of Copilot only works in the tenant that you're in. So, like, what if
Yeah.
you join a meeting and you're, external to that meeting, and you want to be able to go back and, use it
Mhm.
against that hour-long transcription? That's one of the ways you're gonna be able to do it. Pull down the transcript and then throw it in your OneDrive, and then you can work with it from there.
Mhm. Another thing that I want to squeeze in before we leave Teams is a newish feature called Copilot without transcription. This is something that Jorge put in the chat as well. Is you can do it without transcription. It's something I call ephemeral transcription because it really is transcribing technically in the background, but it goes away. It's not stored anywhere. It is discarded when the meeting ends. But the way that you do that is when you're setting up your meeting. So, like if I'm creating a sample meeting right here in Teams, you go to your meeting options right here on the side, or you can get to this through Outlook, the meeting options at the bottom, the link in the body. If you go all the way down to the bottom, you can set it to Copilot without transcription and then save that. Now, Copilot will be available to people without having to transcribe the meeting, but it's only available during the meeting. So it's a little bit of like a middle ground for organizations who don't allow transcription, where you can make it useful for the people who are there, but you do want to keep in mind that it's not useful for the people who like they want to catch up on the meeting because they missed the meeting, like they had a conflict. So you're not getting like all of the value out of Copilot, but this is helpful if your organization's like they're not ready to turn on actual transcription yet. You could set it to that. This also, you can default this as an admin. So you can set the default to be with transcription or without transcription, and then people wouldn't have to change that setting. It just depends a lot on your, organizational, appetite for risk and stuff like that, for whether or not you want your users to be using that feature. But that's where you get to it if you want to use what we call an ephemeral or a temporary transcript. So I think that's it on Microsoft Teams. On to Copilot and Copilot.
So transitioning, yeah, we're moving to Copilot for Microsoft 365. This is the work tab, but we're going to go back and forth between work and web.
Mhm,
Web is Copilot for Enterprise, formerly known as Bing Chat Enterprise, and then the work tab is the Copilot for Microsoft 365. In my opinion, this is the most powerful Copilot experience that we have, because this one
mhm.
Copilot can connect to all of your Microsoft apps and services. So, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, files stored in your OneDrive, SharePoint, or Teams. It can connect to Microsoft Teams. It can connect to Outlook and Exchange and that information. And you can also turn on a plugin, and through that plugin, you can enable it to consume web content and extend beyond there. So I think this is the most powerful Copilot that we have. So this is typically where I'll start Copilot journeys from when I'm working. You can do this in your web browser, bing.com/chat, the work tab.
Mhm.
Depending on the policy, you can do this with the sidebar over here. I click on Edge. I got work and web. I just switch over to work. I can get to that same experience here, and this travels with me no matter where I go and what I'm working on. I'm going to be able to quickly get back to that. So I like the travel with me, the sidebar experience. I typically have this open and working on the side while I'm doing something else. We've seen that tip already. And then the other place that you're going to be able to get this is actually through Microsoft Teams. So this is actually a new feature in the Teams client. But if you go into chat, you may have had M365 chat recently or previously. That's the older experience. This one's
Mhm.
more limited in functionality. It's being deprecated for the new Copilot
Yeah, you
for
do wanna move away from
M365.
that.
What's up?
You do wanna move away from that one called M365
Yeah.
chat, because, yeah, it is going to go away. I actually just saw a banner in my home environment, that told me it's going to go away. So
Okay.
they're, like, starting to advertise that. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen that banner pop up yet, but Copilot is the one that's going to replace that. Now, I
Yep.
have Copilot along my left nav bar. You can do the same by going to the ellipsis, the meatball menu, and inside of there, just look for Copilot. Click on that. That adds Copilot to the left nav bar, and then just right click and you can pin it. And then you'll be able to get back into this in Teams quick and easy. And you don't have to take the extra click in order to get through it through chat.
Yeah.
Now, tips for working with this. As I mentioned, this is where I start off a lot. And I do a lot of things like my brainstorming here. I
Mhm.
do my searches here. Searches turn into cross referencing. Cross referencing turns into research. And I do all of that here. This new Copilot experience brings in your chat history. That's available in the upper right hand corner. And you can go back and you can revisit previous chats and conversations if you need to. So you can load those previous conversations. You can see how many, like when that conversation actually happened. And you can go back in and can pick it up right where you left off, see the number of turns that you've had inside of there, and then um, just continue building content. So this is also a great place to practice prompting. But as we talked earlier, going into Bing Chat Enterprise and using the notebook is also a really great place to
Mhm.
practice your prompting. But my pro tip here is think of this as like as an intern, as an administrative assistant, as a research assistant, because you can ask questions of it, ask follow up questions, pivot off of the topic, cross reference other topics, ask for sample data, ask for explainers. Explain it to me like I'm five. Explain
Mhm.
it to me in the voice of a pirate to keep me entertained. You can do all of those things in the course of the conversation that you're actually having with it. There was a newer feature that I saw that I'm hoping to be able to recreate inside of here. So let me just grab some text real quick. And we'll head back in here. All right, so I'm going to do this from the web, and let's say create an email newsletter for, and I'm just going to paste all of that in, and then I'm going to submit it, and I'm going to let it do its work. Now, I am connected to work, so it's going to try to find things through the Microsoft Graph that I have connections to. But this, if it does what I want it to, there's a button that's going to show up that's going to be really helpful. So we're going to let this run. Hurry up and wait. All right, so it's generating the email. It says subject, dear valued customers, blah blah blah. Oh, it's not going to give it to me here. I was really hoping it was going to give it to me. I've seen in a couple of my tenants that just have the general release on it, a button right here that says send to Outlook. And so it just sends it to Outlook, and I don't have to do the whole copy and paste to send it to Outlook. So it's not going to do that here in this demo, but I've seen that start to pop up in some of my tenants, and that's actually been really helpful. But that being said, I really like this because this is the research assistant, and I was on Copilot Studios with Daniel not too long ago, and we had a conversation about workflow. And one of the things I like doing is my research here, take that over into Word, convert that into an outline in Word, fine tune it, then go over to PowerPoint, reference that outline in PowerPoint, and create my PowerPoint presentation, go back to the Word document, and then turn that into like a blog post or like an FAQ. But all the research actually starts from here. And that's how I'm chaining my Copilot experiences. And I know we had the question earlier today about chaining experiences. That Outlook button is the first step, I think, in chaining those experiences and allowing you a starting point here and easily switching over into another application and moving from there. So that's my bag of tips to kind of get
Little
started
tips and
there.
tricks. Yeah. That that leads me to my tips and tricks, which is really on prompt engineering as well. So some of my favorite prompts that we talk about are, why does it keep, okay, so I blew this up a little bit so it's easier. Getting into prompt engineering a little bit, a lot of people start with like, give me a project update or give me this, give me that, and it's like really short. um, the way I like to think about prompt engineering is like talking to my 6-year-old. My son just turned 6 this week, and if you were to ask him to like empty the dishwasher, he's going to like probably just put the dishes on the floor if you're unlucky. He might put the dishes on like the counter if you're lucky. But if you tell him like, take out, I want you to empty the dishwasher, put these glasses in that cabinet, put the silverware in this particular drawer. I want you to separate them by knives, forks, and spoons. Then he would do a better job, right? He would need a lot more coaching, but like the it's all about how you prompt and giving it those ingredients like we talked about earlier. So one of my favorite prompts is, if I were to say, give me a project update about this project, it gives me just like a paragraph of text because it's very literal. But if I tell it, hey, I want an executive summary, then I want 3 to 5 bullets of accomplishments, then I want challenges, then I want planned activities, and I want them for the past 30 days and the next 30 days. If I give it more detail, I get something that's more usable, right? Because like if your executive or your partner were to say, hey, what's this project update, and you just sent them like a vomit of text, they're going to not be very pleased with you. But if you send them something that an executive could skim, right, that like is more bulleted, then you get a better, you get a better chance of pleasing your leader, right? So I like to show that as like an example. Of course, there's no XYZ project, so it didn't come back with anything. But another thing that I like to do is a lot of times in my job, I have to explain hard things in simpler terms. And a lot of times I don't understand the thing I'm talking about either. So in my research, it's really helpful to ask for analogies and to ask for more than one. So like one thing I do is like the Microsoft graph is kind of hard to understand, right? So I do like explain it to me in three analogies, and it'll tell you like, well, it's like a map of the city. It shows different locations, how they're connected. It might be like a librarian, it indexes everything and it helps you find access to data. It might be like a spider web, right? And this is more of like the picture of what, we see a visual representation of the graph. It's always like a web. So that's really helpful to kind of like, okay, help me understand this. And then another thing, if you really want to get deep, is to like Andy said, explain it like I'm 5. You could give it like an age range. So like my role is an enterprise architect. So explain it like I'm 5, what an enterprise architect does. And it comes back with like, well, they're like a city planner, but for technology. They make sure the infrastructure is well designed, it meets the needs of its citizens. An enterprise architect makes sure that that's well designed and it meets the needs of the employees. So this is probably a little bit heavy for a 5-year-old, to be honest. Like my 5-year-old is not going to know what infrastructure means, but this is kind of a nice little thing. I did a challenge. This is kind of an interesting thing that we should have put in our Teams Nation presentation. Is one thing we did to grow our community and get engagement out of them was we threw this out as a challenge to say, hey, ask Copilot to explain your job like you're 5, and then post it in the Viva Engage community as a response. So we had everybody like explaining like what their job was like to a 5-year-old, and it was kind of a fun, lighthearted thing. But it was like a thing that people took that away and like, I do training, and it's always about trying to make something simpler to understand. Try that. The other thing that I like to do is I learned this. You just reposted this, I think, Andy, from April Dunham, right? I think she's the one. I want to give the right credit where credit's due. I think it was April Dunham on LinkedIn. She said she likes to learn about topics in the voice of Dwight Schrute. So I did that with Copilot Studio and said, hey, explain this like you're Dwight Schrute. And it's like, it's more fun to read that like fact. Studio's a central development hub for M365 users. So it's the Schrute Farms of AI development. you know, false. Copilot is just another tool. It's a powerful platform. So it's kind of funny to do like, hey, explain it as if you were like Homer Simpson or something like that. You can like have it take on a character, and then it makes me understand things better if I'm having fun doing it. So those are kind of my tips, is a little bit of, I don't know, like poking the machine to make it do fun things, because like it's part of that, like Jared Spataro says, like the drudgery of work and being more creative. This is one way you can be creative with your work and like make it not so like terrible to do research. So but yeah, that's my tip with just prompt engineering as well. What's next? What do you think?
Sorry.
Samuel L. Jackson.
Sorry, Phil. I'm going to try that. I
I'm
might
gonna
not
try it
do it
right now, too.
live, but I'm going to try that.
I'm going to do it because I don't care. I may not read it out loud because I don't want to get like an explicit tag on our video.
So while that's loading, just kind of looking back for it, or through the Copilot bullet points we had, looking up instructions, that one's really helpful. So we do a lot of technical training around Microsoft stuff. That's my role, and all of our stuff is either in documents stored in a SharePoint site, or it's content like in our Microsoft Teams, and then looking up instructions and then drafting like a one pager off of that. This makes it super easy. That's a manual effort for me. It could take a couple hours. 28 minutes I think is the average search time for finding a document worldwide. And then the reading through that content, summarizing it, and turning it into something new. Copilot turns that into something that just takes a couple of minutes to get done. Another great use case, using this to generate survey questions or polling. So you get a couple of bullet points, you give it a topic so that you ground it, you tell it what the goal and the context is. The expectation is, I want you to create polling and survey questions for me. And then if you need to, you can point it at a source. You could say like Microsoft Docs, or this file, or this FAQ that we've already generated, and try to generate the survey and polling. You can also ask it to fill in gaps. That's a huge benefit. Like, what
Yeah.
am I missing? Provide another perspective. Be an antagonist to the conversation, and tell me what I'm missing. It's great for that. Um,
Hmm.
Project
So
updates, we kinda showed an example of that, and then the last one that's listed
yeah.
here is Copilot with a PDF. I've had a lot of people asking about this. This one's finally there. You can have it, look up, content from a PDF and use that as part of the conversation, but you have to do it from Copilot. You can't necessarily do it in one of the other Copilot experiences.
Yeah, exactly. From that Copilot chat, you can use the slash command and reference a PDF. So, Phil, you put me in timeout with Copilot. I got in trouble. I told it like Samuel L. Jackson, so it did it, but it didn't curse at me. So I said, do it with gratuitous cursing. And it told me, like, I can't do that. You have to do new chat. So it basically locked me out. I have to start over. Okay. So, Bing Chat Enterprise, or the sidebar. Do you want to talk about that next? Like, uh, yeah, we tried. Um, like, I think what would be interesting maybe is to show the compose button. I saw you doing that on your screen a little bit earlier. That if you open up the Edge sidebar, you can actually compose something. And this was one of my favorite features early on with Copilot, is that the Bing sidebar, it almost like gives you a user interface to generative AI, where you can kind of build like what type of prompt you want, the tone, the format you want it to be in, how long you want it to be. I like that because it's kind of like prompt engineering with buttons, you know? So I feel like it kind of helps people out with not having to do it all with natural language. They can do it with the compose button, and they can kind of like turn some knobs basically.
Yeah, so, uh, I like using this for a couple of different things. Like, I use it in the sidebar because it allows me to have something in the middle to reference, and then I can work with it over here. And it's easy enough to do things like copy and paste and pull that information back and forth, and then tell it what I want. You do have a 2,000 character limit over there. And one of the thing to point out, like when I highlighted this stuff, there is an Ask Copilot option that does bring up that sidebar, which is actually really helpful. But sometimes you need to provide a little bit more context around it. So I just uh, copy and pasted this in there to kind of get it started. I'm going to make it casual. You can tell it, paragraph, bullet points, summary, report, whatever you want. Maybe I just want to do a report of a medium length, and then you can generate off of that. Um, so I'll let that run. But the compose is a huge time saver, because like I can go and say, okay, here's the instructions on how to do something. Somebody's got a question about permissions and teams. Here's what you need to know. Copy and paste that. Go over.
Mhm.
Tell it, hey, craft an email and explain this overview. Here's the instructions. Generate the email. I can review the draft down here. I can go in and I can regenerate it if I need. I can do follow up or examples if I want. And then there's the add to
Mhm.
site. So depending on where you are, say for example, you've got a new document that you're working on. So we'll just let this load. Let me clear the Copilot box here. So cursor's inside of there, add to site,
Yeah.
and now it's
So
just brought that
nice.
content right into your document, quick and easy. This works really well with like Word or PowerPoint. Works really well with OneNote. But you get the compose over here, and then it's just easy to generate a draft and just get over the blank page. Get that little bit of information that you need. That's another thing I want to expand on. I'm going to go back to this is where I started this document from Microsoft, crafting effective prompts. One of the things that you can do is you can allow, depending on the settings in your organization, you can allow Copilot to work with the content that's on this page. I think it's already turned on this particular one, but you can allow it to recognize the content that's on the page that you're
Mhm.
working on. So that when you do highlight something or you do send it to Copilot, it automatic, like you don't, like I can just highlight this and it'll show up over there, and then it'll start doing something with it. So it can be contextually aware of the content that's on the page, and then you can Copilot against that without having to leave the page. And now you got another tool in your tool belt, because not only can you have this conversation against it right
Mhm.
here, copy that, maybe go ahead and create a Word doc. That's really helpful. We've seen that already. There it is. But you can also go up and then hit the compose button. And now you've maybe got some ideas in between just this one window, essentially with the sidebar. You're already creating something that you can go use someplace else.
Mhm. Yeah, that's really nice. I've never used the Ask Copilot feature before. That's something that I definitely need to check out a lot more. I saw it just pop up when you right clicked earlier on, and I was like, I'm over here like trying that out myself. The other thing that I just saw in Copilot sidebar is the ability to add a screenshot too. So like if you want to, ask a question about something, you could also like I don't know, let's go into here and say like Copilot architecture diagram, right? And like kind of to P's point, what she was saying earlier on about like a diagram, like creating a diagram. What if you could ask it to explain the diagram? So in here, if you're in the web version, you can just even take a screenshot. You could upload a picture, but you can just snap a screenshot directly in Edge, hit done. It puts it in right there and say, explain this. And then it will like read and understand that image and try to explain it for you. So you could do that without having to like, save it to your desktop and then bring it in, something like that. Yeah, Daryl, where would you even start with like a diagram like that? Uh, so Praxidus, she was asking like where like can you create a diagram in PowerPoint? Unfortunately, you can't. This is something, Daryl, that I've done with Chat GPT Plus though, is you can do like I think it's diagrams.io, and it will allow you to create diagrams in Chat GPT. I haven't found a Microsoft equivalent yet, but yeah, so it's trying to, explain it. I don't know why it did prompt engineering. Probably because I needed to start a new topic first, so it was pulling context. But that's something that I've found also is that you can now do a screenshot. It used to be you could just take a picture, which is this first icon, but now you can actually do a screenshot. And in that it's screenshot, you can also annotate it as well before you like send it over to Copilot. You can like, draw something on it, add arrows and things. So that's pretty sweet.
I'm glad you
Um,
mentioned that. What what's show another version of that, and what you can do with it. So we're kind of
okay.
we're going a little bit back and forth between work and web. So I want to point out
Yeah.
I'm in the work tab here, and like notice like I don't have like a picture icon, anything like that. So I'm limited. But if I do the attachments down here, it's going to look for cloud files. So it could reference something that I have stored in the cloud. But if you toggle that over to web, that's what very similar to what John was just showing in the sidebar. Now I
Hmm.
get this little, add an image option. All right, so I'm going to click on that, and I'm just going to upload from this device. I just grabbed an image a minute ago, so let me go ahead and get that. All right, here it is, and I'm going to upload that. All right, so now I've uploaded an image, and I'll show you what the image is, and then we'll circle back to it in a minute. So the image that I uploaded is actually this guy right here. This is
Hmm.
the
The
architectural
flow.
view of how Copilot actually works. That's a pretty busy graphic. There's a lot going on inside of there. But let's head back to Copilot. It's down here. And I'm going to say create a one page um, how to guide using this image. And you see it's telling me or confirming that it's got that that item. It's responding, and I'm just going to get it a minute. I've done this a bunch of times for a few different diagrams and processes, and it usually does a really good job of identifying the process overall, and then being able to create an explainer around it. We're gonna
Mhm.
see what this one does here. Probably should have queued this up like ahead of time while we're waiting. But this one's been really helpful. Take a picture of a whiteboard, explain what's going on with it. Take a picture of a whiteboard. Hey, create some meeting notes around this for me. Super helpful. And if you're on mobile device, you can take a picture of the whiteboard using your OneDrive app, and you'll store it right in your OneDrive, and it's easy to um, to go back and work with. And there it goes. It's off and running. Pretty cool. And
Dude, that's so nice. Like the vision capabilities are insane.
yeah.
I can't wait until Copilot for Microsoft 365 gets those vision capabilities where you can create image, but also understand and ask about images. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. Yeah.
I'm just gonna let this one run because just knowing what I know about that diagram, the bullet points that it's creating are actually pretty straightforward.
Yeah, they really are. Like that's actually like pretty accurate.
Yeah.
It's
And
interesting
so,
too because it did look out on the web, because it's got a bunch of references. At bleepingcomputer.com
well,
was one
keep
of
in
its
mind
references.
this one was
The web
the
version. Yeah.
artist formerly known as Bing Chat Enterprise.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So that one's really helpful.
That's impressive though.
Another one that I really like doing is I downloaded that. So I'm gonna start a new topic. Another one that I really like doing is let's take like some information from um let's just see if it'll take this. All right, so I'm going to take this thing, I'm going to head back. All right, and then I'm going to say fact check and provide references for, and then paste that information in. And we'll see whether it actually does this or not. But I use this as like a final editing technique on some content. So like I'll draft a technical article, I'll draft a how-to. I'll go over here and just paste it in and just tell it, hey, go through and fact check it. And if there are any references for me, call those out, and we'll see what it's actually responding with. And you can have it return this in like a whole bunch of different ways, but I'm using this to do the research on it. I'm still going to validate what it's saying. It's like, well, this is partially accurate, and I
Mhm.
don't know what the question was there.
That's what Daryl said is like, you got to look at that content. Like, that was really impressive that it read from an image, but that's a common thread throughout all this. As you just said, like, you got to make sure it's accurate, right?
Yeah,
Which is,
remember, it's
that's why, like,
Copilot, it's not autopilot.
yeah, it's
You
not
get that on a
replacing
t-shirt.
you at this point, like people still need to be experts in things. We still need people to understand what they're doing, because you can't just like, just get a bunch of like brand new people who don't know the concepts of what it's generating, because yeah, they got to make sure that it's not going off the rails, you know. Um that's going to be an interesting concept to learn over the next coming years, as we hopefully don't, but likely will see like job losses because of AI. And I think we're going to see a pendulum swing one direction and then swing back the other direction when those decision makers understand that, like, oh no, we got rid of everybody who knows anything. So we embarrassed ourselves like crazy because we got too reliant on AI. Um, I have concerns about that as an experienced professional.
And I've completely agree with those concerns, and that's why I can just continue to say it's not Copilot, or it's Copilot.
It's
It's
not,
not autopilot,
yeah.
over and over. Like always go through and vet the content that's actually coming back, and that's why like for this particular prompt, I want provide the references. Give me the references so I can go back and look at that to see if it's accurate or not. And I'm going to save
Yeah.
this. So I want to go back and I want to look at that later after today. And I want to see, based off of everything that it recorded from our transcript earlier, how accurate that FAQ is in our
Hmm.
responses, and if there's any areas that we need to go back and learn. But that one's huge for me. I really like that. Fact check this thing, provide references, and that
Yeah.
really cleans up a lot of content.
I definitely got to start using that and show other people. That's something I haven't done before. I kind of do like I manually am like hunting through, but this looks like it would like collate that stuff so that you're still manually looking at things, but you're not quite doing so much hunting because it's like bubbling it for you.
Well, the biggest part is it's going and finding the blogs that are it's searching for me. It's
Yeah,
it's one
exactly.
prompt and it's searching out the relevant resources
Hmm.
for me. I don't have to put all the manual effort into going and finding that. I have a starting point from there.
Yeah, just another reason why like having access to the internet is so powerful for these LLMs. Like you're using the web tab. Also in the work tab, you can invoke the web content plugin and then it will search the web. Some organizations are, they're blocking that because of like certain reasons, but having access to the web could be really valuable for like increasing the accuracy, you know.
All right, so we're getting pretty close to the 2 hour time. We've covered a lot. We were really optimistic because we only got through half the stuff in our notebook over here.
As per
There might be a
usual.
follow up to this, especially because this plane is still in the air and it's still being built while we're airborne.
I feel
So
like
we
we
might have
should
to
do this
circle
like
back.
once a quarter or something, like what we've learned in the past quarter.
But I think to take us home, I want to show this one, and this is totally shameless plug. If you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, please hit that subscribe button and join over there. But the last thing I want to show is I'm going to pull up this video, and through the Copilot in the sidebar experience, one of the things that you can actually do is summarize this YouTube video.
Mhm. This might be really helpful on this YouTube video if you watch this after the fact because it's 2 hours, man.
So we're just going to give it a second. But I've used this quite a bit. It's really helpful, especially for our buddies over with the
The Message
M365
Center show.
message show,
Yeah.
Modern Work Mentor. John, do you just call your channel John Moore?
Yeah, yeah, it's just John Moore. It's just my
We got to
name.
get you a clever name
Yeah.
for it.
I mean, my name is like at Collab More. I did like a play on my last name, but yeah.
But yeah,
If it's just my name, I can pivot, right? Like lately I've been talking about like my Apple Vision Pro because like I'm geeking out about it. It's like I can do stuff like that. I can talk about something else for a little bit, maybe not lose a lot of subscribers in the process.
all right. So
That's pretty good. So does it need like the auto generated captions and transcript to do that?
that is something I do not know the answer to.
Okay.
I uploaded
Yeah.
this to
I see
YouTube.
it's got timestamps.
Yeah, yeah. I did not upload this with a caption file. It was automatically generated. It's doing the timestamps on its own, so I imagine it might be using the auto-generated captions on the back end. I haven't looked more deeply than that in it. I just know that I use this and use this quite frequently, and having it in the
Hmm.
sidebar is really helpful because like I can go into kind of my theater view, just concentrate on that. I can do the summary off to the side, so like I kind of have something to reference if I need to like later on, and just really makes it easy to take notes on something I'm watching on YouTube.
Yeah, yeah. There you go. Also works with Microsoft Stream videos. Yeah, I have done that with Microsoft Stream videos before. I am looking forward to Stream Copilot and Stream coming. That hopefully will be soon, so we could talk about that in a future episode because I think that's gonna be really powerful to ask those questions like right in the Stream page. But yeah, if you have the sidebar, you can do that in Stream and YouTube as well. Have you found much limit on like how long the video can be before it just kind of like craps out and doesn't work anymore? Like, would it work against our 2-hour live streams, or
I'm gonna
does it
go
need to
with
be?
no.
Yeah, yeah. It's a pretty big transcript. Yeah, I'd be curious about that. I'll have to do some playing with that because I've always been wanting to do that, like chop these things up into shorts, or get some like insights out of our things. But yeah, so I hope that this was, enlightening. This was a lot of rapid fire stuff, in like, hey, oh, this thing and oh, that thing. We tried to keep it like by application, so hopefully it was a little bit structured. But let us know in the comments below if you watch this later or live in the chat, uh, if this was helpful for you. If there's other things like this you'd like to see, for sure. I mean, Andy and I were always looking for like what the next thing we want to deep dive on, if we want to stay on the Copilot thing, or if we want to stay on, or go to something else like Clipchamp or things like that. So, but cool. Andy, where can they find us on socials as of
Well,
now?
we do have at 365 Deep Dive. You'll find that on Twitter. We tag all of our stuff on YouTube with 365 Deep Dive as well. And
Hmm.
then individually, you'll find me at Andy Honeycutt on both Twitter and YouTube, and William Honeycutt on LinkedIn, because that's my
Hmm.
first name, and I'm just trying to keep it professional. But yeah, that's where you'll find me. What about you, John?
Okay. Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn as well, of course. We're live streaming on both of our LinkedIn's, and then you can find me on YouTube at collabmore. And I'm not really doing Twitter much anymore, but I don't have a great like alternative yet, like Blue Sky or Threads or whatever, quite yet. So you got on Blue Sky, didn't you,
Yeah,
recently? Yeah,
yeah.
I'm on them, but I just don't do anything on them yet.
It went
So
federated yesterday, so now you can create your own
nice.
server and then connect into the service. I'm really interested in exploring that.
Yeah. Cool. All right,
Well,
guys. Well, until next time, have a great weekend.
thanks everybody. See you in the next one.
All right. Bye, guys.